The roar of the Texas crowd usually signals a celebration, but inside the Prima Pramac Yamaha garage at the Circuit of the Americas, the silence is deafening. Toprak Razgatlioglu, the man they call Stoprak, the rider who redefined the laws of physics in World Superbike, sits motionless. He has just finished the 2026 Austin Grand Prix. He isn't on the podium. He isn't even in the top 10. For a rider who spent years standing on the necks of his competition, finishing 15th feels like a slow-motion car crash. The cameras catch a flicker of frustration in his eyes before the visor drops. No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next. It wasn't just a bad race. It was the moment the Turkish superstar realized he was trapped. A technical ghost had entered the machine, and it was threatening to turn his MotoGP dream into a career-ending nightmare. The whispers began almost immediately. Was the transition from production bikes to this prototype M1 V4 a mistake? Or had Yamaha, a titan of Japanese engineering, finally hit a wall they couldn't climb? The truth was far more complex than anyone imagined, and it would change everything for him, his team, and the entire 2026 season. To understand the gravity of this moment, you have to understand the gamble. In late 2025, Toprak Razgatlioglu did the unthinkable. He walked away from a multi-million-dollar loyalty offer from BMW after a historic 13-win streak to join Yamaha's ambitious new MotoGP project. Yamaha was desperate. After years of watching Ducati and KTM dominate with V4 engines and aggressive aerodynamics, the Iwata factory finally abandoned their legendary inline-4 DNA. They needed a pilot who could handle the violence of a 300-horsepower prototype. They chose Toprak. The hype was stratospheric. Paddock veterans likened him to a modern-day Casey Stoner, a rider with an instinctive, almost animalistic ability to find grip where none existed. When the season launched in Siena, Italy, the Turkish flag flew high. Toprak was the first of his nation to reach the premier class, carrying the expectations of millions. But as the lights went out for the opening rounds in Thailand and Brazil, the fairy tale hit the asphalt. Hard. The transition from Pirelli tires to the specialized Michelin rubber was proving to be a psychological war. In superbikes, Toprak was the master of the stoppie, braking so hard the rear wheel hovered inches off the ground. In MotoGP, that style was being neutralized by the M1's sensitive electronics. The superbike king was learning that in this world, his greatest strength was becoming his biggest liability. As the tour moved to North America, the technical cracks in the Yamaha project widened into canyons. Toprak began voicing an urgent, almost desperate need for change. The issue wasn't just speed, it was a total lack of mechanical harmony. During corner acceleration, the M1 was behaving like a wild animal. When Toprak tried to open the throttle, the rear tire wouldn't bite. Instead of propelling him forward, the bike would spin, the electronics would intervene, and his rivals on Ducatis would simply vanish into the distance. According to insiders, the problem was a digital ghost. The M1's ECU and its mechanical heart were speaking different languages. Toprak explained to the media that he was being forced to restrain his aggressiveness. For a rider whose entire DNA is built on attacking the track, this was a death sentence for his lap times. He couldn't trust the bike. The technical gap was staggering. While the KTMs and Ducatis used sophisticated ride-height devices and ground-effect aerodynamics to glue themselves to the track, the Yamaha felt light and nervous. Paddock analysts noted that Toprak was losing nearly 0.4 of a second on every major straight. But the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in a closed-door meeting where Toprak issued a stark ultimatum: fix the chassis or watch the project collapse. Inside the garage, the pressure was mounting. Toprak didn't just ask for improvements, he identified the exact culprits: the Swingarm and the chassis. He argued that the current Swingarm was unable to provide the necessary stability when the tires began to degrade. Without a redesign, the weight distribution was fundamentally flawed, making it impossible to transmit the engine's power to the asphalt effectively. This wasn't just a rider complaining, this was a surgical critique. He needed a chassis that could provide a clear response during his extreme braking maneuvers. When entering high-speed corners, he felt the front and rear of the bike were out of sync, a terrifying sensation at 220 miles per hour. The tension within the team was palpable. Yamaha's engineers, traditional and methodical, were being pushed by a rider who demanded instant results. Rumors suggested deeper tension behind closed doors. Some mechanics claimed that the bike's aero package was actually fighting Toprak's riding position. At 6'1", he is one of the tallest riders on the grid, and the strict 2026 aero regulations meant Yamaha had to compromise his seating position to fit the wings. He was literally too big for the bike's aerodynamic sweet spot. But what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. As the results remained stagnant, 17th in Thailand, 17th in Brazil, the narrative began to shift from Toprak is learning to Toprak is failing. Media criticism intensified. Online debates raged about whether he had peaked in superbikes and lacked the precision for MotoGP prototypes. The psychological pressure was immense. Every practice session ended with Toprak hunched over data screens, his face a mask of exhaustion. Meanwhile, his rivals weren't just faster, they were smarter. Ducati had perfected a hidden aero secret in their lower fairing that stabilized the bike in dirty air, making it nearly impossible for Toprak to overtake. Even KTM, once the underdog, had developed a chassis that allowed their riders to square off corners, a technique Toprak used to own. The collapse wasn't just on the scoreboard, it was in the body language. For the first time in his career, Toprak looked beatable. Paddock whispers grew louder. Was there an exit clause in his contract? Some scouts from European manufacturers were already seen hovering near his manager, Kenan Sofuoglu. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm that would put Yamaha's entire future in doubt. Just as the criticism reached a fever pitch, a shocking piece of telemetry leaked from a private test at Mugello. The data suggested that when the M1 did work, Toprak was shattering Marc Marquez's long-standing braking benchmarks. He wasn't the problem, the bike was a masterpiece that was simply unfinished. But there was a twist that changed the championship narrative entirely. The looming 2027 regulation changes, which will reduce engine sizes to 850cc, meant that Yamaha was effectively developing two different bikes at once. Some believe the factory was already quiet quitting the 2026 season to focus on the 2027 reboot. If true, it meant Toprak was being used as a high-speed crash test dummy for a bike that would never be fully optimized. He was fighting for points with a ghost machine, while the engineers were already looking at the next year. This revelation sent shockwaves through the Prima Pramac garage. Was Toprak's career being sacrificed for a future he might not even be a part of? As the Paddock packs up for the European leg of the season, the stakes have never been higher. Toprak Razgatlioglu has finally scored his first MotoGP point, a hard-fought 15th place at Austin, but there is no celebration. He is very angry about the braking issues that cost him a top 10 finish. Yamaha's technical team is now working around the clock. The new Swingarm chassis are rumored to be arriving for the next race, but will they be enough to close the gap to the dominant Ducatis? Or is the traction trap too deep to escape? Toprak remains a man of faith and discipline, but his patience is wearing thin. He isn't just fighting his rivals, he is fighting the very machine that was supposed to be his ticket to immortality. The next 3 races will define the rest of his life. If the updates fail, the Turkish chapter in MotoGP might end before it truly begins. What happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. And it's a story that is still being written in the smoke and rubber of the world's most dangerous tracks.